Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're breaking down the SEC football betting action for Week 6. Today, we're talking about the Alabama Crimson Tide visiting the Texas A&M Aggies. This game's going to be played at Kyle Field at 8 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night, and the game's going to be televised on CBS. The line for this game opened at Alabama as a 16-point favorite, and the Crimson Tide has crept up to an 18-point favorite as of the recording of this video. The over-under opened at 49.5, and it's moved up to 51 as of Thursday. Going to bring in our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, what do you make of the movement on this game so far?
Yeah, interestingly, this game, I think, opened in May with the look-ahead lines for South Point in Las Vegas. And it was Alabama was a 10-point favorite at that time. And there was a little sharp money, pushed it up to 10.5. But, now this is, well above 17. So definitely going from maybe the game of the year in the SEC to maybe not that exciting of a game, but we'll see what happens once we get into this one. And there's still a lot to break down from a betting standpoint. But Nick, why don't you tell us about the weather and then get into Nick's news and notes?
Sure. So the weather in College Station on Saturday night should be pretty manageable. We should be looking at temperatures in the upper 70s. And we do have a little bit of wind to look out for. It's about 10 miles an hour is a projected wind number. So just keep an eye on that before kickoff to see if it gets any higher than that. Could have a little bit of an impact on the kicking game at least. Injuries for this game, let's look at those next. Alabama running back Jace McClellan, who was very close number 2 to star running back Brian Robinson, is now out for the season. And freshman running back Kamar Wheaton got hurt before the season. And it wasn't season ending, but he still seems to be out. And that leaves the Tide with an interesting situation where they just have 3 scholarship running backs. You think of them as sort of being an unlimited talent type of team, but they're down to 3 scholarship running backs. Obviously got a really good one at the front, and that helps. Robinson carried the ball 36 times against Ole Miss, which was a great performance, but maybe an indicator of just where they're at from a depth perspective at this moment in time. A linebacker, Drew Sanders, is out for Alabama this week, which is now 2 of their top outside linebackers being out. So a little bit thin there on the first line defense for the Tide as well. On the Texas A&M side, obviously there's some situations that we've been monitoring for the majority of the season. Starting quarterback Haynes King is going to be out for a long time, and wide receiver Caleb Chapman, who missed the last 3 games, is questionable for this one. Then you look at their offensive line. Center Luke Matthews is out for the year after playing just 1 game. And cornerback Miles Jones is also out for the year as a guy that has 29 career starts. Cornerback Brian George, who started the first 4 games, is also out for the season. So the Aggies are sort of insult to injury or injury to insult, however you want to look at it, with 2 consecutive losses and injury list piling up on them. And then the last thing I would bring up is just, we've talked a lot about early in the season when we're analyzing Alabama from a betting perspective about all the parts that they replaced on their offense and, breaking in a new quarterback, a whole new set of wide receivers. Najee Harris is gone. You got a new running back. And then you look at Bryce Young, who now he leads the SEC in passing touchdowns with 17 compared to just 2 interceptions. And you wonder what we were worried about at all, right, Christopher? Just, people say, oh, Nick Saban will reload. And Ray was kind of like, I'm not sure that's actually the case with so many pieces, but maybe it was, right?
Actually, I don't think it's been the case. Those numbers look good, but this is not the same Alabama offense as we saw the last 2 seasons. And just because Alabama was able to run the ball against Ole Miss, which had 6 defensive backs on the field pretty much the whole game, doesn't mean that Alabama is going to be able to run the ball against Texas A&M, which is more of a traditional defense and is much better than Ole Miss, to be frank, on defense. Alabama's offensive line still has some issues. And honestly, Alabama has not been able to throw the ball deep downfield this year. And part of that's been because of the offensive line, and establishing the running game has been tougher most weeks for Alabama, but also, protection has been a little tougher. So the play action deep shots have been a little tougher. And Bryce Young has not shown that his best throw is deep downfield. So, what does that mean against Texas A&M? Well, Texas A&M's pass defense is actually number 2 in EPA per snap in the country. And last week was a little bit of an anomaly against the air raid. And the defense did struggle a little bit in the screen game and tackling in open space, which could be an issue against Alabama because what Alabama's done all season is throw underneath and let its athletes run after the catch. And that's something Bryce Young is very good at. And so, but I think, we've talked a lot about Texas A&M and sort of their weakness at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, but especially their offensive line. But if you look at the last 2 games, which they lost both of those, I think you might be surprised if you look at the stats to know that even against Arkansas, they held on a yards per carry basis, they held a 5.3 to 4.0 yards per carry advantage in that game. I think the narrative out of that game was that Arkansas whipped A&M at the line of scrimmage, where actually that wasn't really the case. Arkansas just made more plays in the passing game. And then, Mississippi State has a very good run defense, but Texas A&M had a 5.1 to 1.8 yards per carry advantage there last week at the line of scrimmage. So, you mentioned Robinson. 36 carries is a lot for a college running back. And when Robinson is in the game, McClellan gave Alabama more of a dual threat guy who could catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So I think A&M will know if Robinson is in the game, he's not going to catch passes. He's going to run the ball, and he may be a little worn down and a little tired. And to be frank, right now, Alabama doesn't really have a number 2 back that is a serious threat to be one of the best in the SEC. So I do think, the Texas A&M's injury situation, it sounds bad, but really not much has changed for the Aggies. I mean, Miles Jones has only played 13 snaps this season. Matthews only played 6 snaps. King has been out. Brian George had the 16th best coverage grade on the whole team, according to Pro Football Focus. Doesn't seem like a major loss to me that he's out. So actually, I think Alabama's injury situation in this game is a bigger deal, even though the narrative may seem otherwise. So lots to think about. Isaiah Spiller, Anais Smith, Jalen Wademeyer, Devin Akane, they're all very good players for the Aggies on offense. I kind of think Jimbo Fisher has enough to probably grind out some first downs and sustain some drives. And we've seen it in the past in these types of games, really try to shorten the game, drain the clock, and kind of hope it comes down to just a few possessions. So I would expect him to at least attempt to do that as well in this game. But Nick, why don't you tell us how you're betting on this game and where we're going to make some money?
Sure. So you probably saw my terrible performance in week 5 down to 6-10. So people may be tuning in for my picks to fade me this week, right? So, but I retreated. I left the state. You check my new background here. This is a fresh start. It's a new week. And so what I hear when you say drain the clock, shorten the amount of possessions, I start thinking about unders, right? I like under 51, I guess is the short way to say that. When you don't like the prospects for A&M to score, but you do like the idea that they're going to take up some possession time, and that, as you documented, they have a very good defense, even with the injury situation. So let's go under there, and then I'm going to get back to the basics and start betting on the Crimson Tide. I know that that's maybe not your favorite play this week, but I've seen enough out of these younger guys who are gaining more experience as the season goes on. No, they're not the Alabama offense of the last couple of years, but they're still pretty dang good, and I like them minus 18. So give me the Tide.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely side with you on the under in this game. Texas A&M has one of the best special teams in the country as well, so they're very well positioned from a kicking game standpoint, from a coverage standpoint on special teams, to play field position football. And also just the injury situation I mentioned and the game script I expect, and also just from a standpoint of trying to buy low and try to sell high, I'm going with Texas A&M plus 18 in this game. I actually think everything sets up super well for an Aggies cover in this game. I don't expect them to be in this game or to threaten to win or to be leading in the fourth quarter, but I could easily see a game that's more in the neighborhood of 28-17 or 31-17, somewhere in that range, with maybe A&M even having a chance to score a field goal or a touchdown late, even if they do fall behind the number to cover. So that's what I'm taking. We'll find out who wins this battle head-to-head this week. But for Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you soon.